have in front of them, putting out these fires by hand in some cases. From what you witnessed, is the only way to prevent further destruction to convince those with vested interest, the politicians, the farmers you mentioned, to actually change course?
Absolutely. I mean, you can see there, even if, for example, you manage to get the United States military, even Russia, China, all working together, potentially, to put these fires out, you would still have an enormous struggle to get enough water dumped on these parts of the Amazon to actually make an impact.
Today, we will be discussing settler colonial states, neoliberalism a little bit, and the genocide of indigenous peoples in Brazil. While I cannot claim to intimately know all about what I will be discussing today, as I am not an indigenous person from Brazil, I am committed to learning more. If I missed something in this video, please mention and discuss it in the comments, because the only way we all unlearn is through the sharing of knowledge. I do believe that this is work that I should be undertaking, and I hope you will do the work too. So, the Brazilian Amazon is burning. How did we get here? Well, fires are a natural occurrence in the Amazon at this time of the year, but NGOs and environmentalists have attributed the fires to farmers burning the forest to clear land for pasture and for raising the forest for its wood. What's more important is that indigenous peoples have been talking about this for a very long time. This has affected them as they have occupied the Amazon for over 11,000 years, and they are dependent on the forest for everything and are seeing their lands burned before their eyes. This diminishment of lands further exacerbated by state-sanctioned legalization, as Brazil's new far-right president, Bolsonaro, has taken a hardline stand against indigenous sovereignty. He has dismantled FUNAI, the government department focused on indigenous affairs, and he has compared the indigenous communities living in reserves to animals living in the zoos, comments he has been condemned for. While Bolsonaro is deserving of all the condemnation he has received, the issues go further than the new populist president. Postcolonial Brazil's history began with ethnocide, colonization, and violence. The genocide of the indigenous peoples of Brazil first began with the Portuguese colonization of the Americas, when Pedro Álvares Cabral made landfall on the Brazilian coast in 1500. In a letter to King Manuel I of Portugal, Pero Vaz de Caminha, a Portuguese knight who accompanied Pedro Álvares Cabral, noted that the Tupi indigenous people did not plow or breed cattle. There is no oxen there, nor goats, sheep, fowls, nor any other animal accustomed to living with man. Pero continues to detail the innocence of the Tupi, quote unquote, and how easy it would be to, quote unquote, spread their holy religion. During the second half of the 16th century, Portuguese colonists and Jesuit missionaries struggled over the best way to control and convert the indigenous peoples of Brazil. Both the colonists and the missionaries began to enslave the native peoples, and the crown issued laws limiting or prohibiting their enslavement in 1574, 1595, 1609, and 1680, but there were always loopholes in the legislation. What followed was hundreds of years of slavery, genocide, death due to diseases, violence, and the depopulation of the indigenous peoples of Brazil that is still ongoing today.
Destruction that overshadows an entire branch of our species here.
The Tenyarim are an indigenous community, 1,000 strong, who say they legally own nearly 1 million hectares nearby.
The next generation will have a darker future, he says. Since this president came to power, these things are happening a lot more.
Over 80 indigenous tribes were destroyed between 1900 to 1957, and the overall indigenous population declined by over 80%, from over 1 million to 200,000. Since the 1980s, there has been a boom in the exploitation of the Amazon from mining, logging, and cattle ranching, which poses a severe threat to the flora and fauna in the area, but also to the indigenous peoples who rely on the land. Settlers have been illegally encroaching on that land that the indigenous peoples have been traditionally using for thousands of years. The 1988 Brazilian Constitution recognizes indigenous peoples' rights to pursue their traditional ways of life and to the permanent and exclusive possession of the land. However, they continue to face a number of threats through the slow violence of the government. But hold up, why is indigenous sovereignty so important, and what does it have to do with the fires? Well, a good example of the connection is in the story of Guarani and Kaiowa people of Brazil. It was Imanguare, ancient time. It was during the Third Earth when white people entered the territory now known as Brazil. Nanderu was recreating the world after his father had destroyed the second earth with darkness and fire. In order to decide what the white people and the Guarani and Kaiowa people would be like, he proposed a game. Nanderu put a series of objects on the ground. To one side, he put male adornments used during religious Guarani rituals. To the other, he put pen, pencil, paper, and the Bible. Ahead, he put the children, a Guarani boy and a girl, and a white boy and a girl. Nanderu told them to choose their preferences. While the Guarani children chose the objects related to learning through the Guarani spiritual experience, the white children chose the objects related to learning at school. As a result, the Guarani and Kaiowa ancestors decided to continue following their Nanji Heko their own way. That is one of the central narratives of Guarani and Kaiowa history, and one that provides the foundations for their political sovereignty. However, their sovereignty has been limited by the colonial powers in Brazil. For them, being sovereign is being able to choose to live according to their life ways and guaranteeing the enforcement of their cosmological commitments in a proper territory. This is why recovering the land is so important.
Esse tecorá reserva não é de fazendeiro não. Esse cemitério antigo da minha avó tá tudo lá também. E meu pai tá também. Agora minha tia Melita, ela nascemos lá, agora morreu de lá, enterramos lá de novo lá, aqui no tecorá. Então por isso que em Kaiowa pedimos para revoltar a área, nós temos que tecorá por cair. Aqui na estrada estou passando, quando chover, bebemos igual o cachorro, água suja, aqui não tem poço. A criança bebe água suja, não dá para... Tem que beber, tem que beber água suja, não tem poço, não tem mina boa, não tem. Então por isso que a gente pedimos, se agora estou sentado em cima da minha frente, né? Pedimos para entrar de novo de lá no Tecorá. Então a comunidade falou, tem que pelejar para entrar no Tecorá.
According to the sociologist Ulia Popova and her research on conservation and traditional knowledge for indigenous peoples, the settings where indigenous communities tend to benefit most are states where indigenous individuals enjoy a greater degree of legal and social protection as citizens, and the land is further better off for it as they are able to take care of the land the way they have for thousands of years. The advancement of colonization has reduced its territorial and social scopes of validity and resulted in violence, extreme poverty, and discrimination. In Popova's research, she looked at conservation projects managed by indigenous communities, and she notes that the factors that most influence the degree and forms of indigenous involvement relate to the state of indigenous rights and mechanisms for the protection within a specific state. In Popova's research, she looked at conservation projects managed by indigenous communities, and she notes that the factors that most influence the degree and forms of indigenous involvement relate to the state of indigenous rights and mechanisms for their protection within a specific state. The kind of knowledge that emerges from collaborative work and/or from involvement of indigenous individuals may be the means of change toward improving the indigenous economies and social state relations with external actors while also serving as a means to care for the environment. In other words, the recognition and demarcation of indigenous sovereignty are important in the steps to decolonization, and this work is what will also conserve the land.
O Brasil não foi descoberto, o Brasil foi invadido. A miscigenação não foi espontânea. que nós queremos o quê? Ter o direito de ter nossas terras, ter no futuro nossas crianças, é só isso. Mas não, o homem, o Deus dele é a ganância. Nossa mãe é a natureza. Então, a partir do momento que invadem terras indígenas, que matam nossas crianças, que destroem tudo, acaba tudo. Quando o homem perceber que dinheiro não se come, aí sim vai ser tarde demais.
So what can we do to help? You can provide support to the indigenous peoples who have been fighting to save the Amazon for decades and have been treated violently by their government because of their relentlessness. You can donate money to the Power to the Protectors Fund, spread awareness if you don't have money, stand up for women defenders of the Amazon, and listen to what indigenous peoples have to say. I've included some links in the description box below if you'd like to help out. If you'd like to do more reading about the struggle for indigenous sovereignty in Brazil, please check out the titles in the description box. Thank you for watching. As always, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to follow me, my social media information is in the description box below. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!